Hello everyone, welcome to the course RX231 Concepts in Planning. I'm Tasfeen Aziz. I will be taking this class. I would like to introduce you with the course design, and this course is 2 credit hour course, so you will have to take 2 classes in a week. And this course has been designed in 2 sections. The first section will be conducted in Sunday and Thursday, and the second section will be conducted in Monday and Wednesday. And the final exam for this course is designed for day 2 morning. So what is our expectation from this course? If you see the overview and all those bullet points, you will imagine that this course is about city, and this city planning and city organization is somehow the key elements we will be talking. The course will be covering fundamental theories, concepts, and ideology of planning. And this planning is about giving the overview of the concepts, overview from a spatial spectrum, from the perspective of space. So fundamental theories, concepts, and ideologies of planning is not only taking you through the theories and concepts, but also rationalize how these theories and concepts and ideologies are actually implemented in the field. So to do that, we need to understand the system, and this system is coming through the plans and planning process. So planning process is dependent on the systemic behavior of a city, and to understand those behavior of a city, we need to understand a bit about the history of urban planning evolution. There are 10 theories of urban planning evolutions, and these 10 theories will be divided into 2 classes to discuss, and which will lead us to understand the nature, form, and composition of the cities. Once we are quite familiar with the nature, form, and composition of the cities, we will be knowing the global trend of cities nowadays. We will be talking about urbanization, we will be talking about inequality, we'll be talking about different functions of different systems and subsystems. After knowing that, we will be little bit extend our understanding towards the rural and urban linkages, how cities and other regions are interacting with each other, and how they're playing, how they're cooperating among each other is important to know. And with this note, we will be exposed to urban complexity. That means there are a lot of systems exist in a city, and towns and villages, and all those systems are dependent to each other. They are correlated, and all these correlations and dependency is coming through different problems, and we call them wicked problems. These wicked problems are somehow interdependent. They are difficult to understand if we see them in an isolated matter. So we want to see them in a kind of a holistic way to understand all those wicked problems to solve the urban complexity in the end. We have different sets of know-how, and we have different sets of approach to understand urban planning processes, and we will be knowing these approaches. And once we know the approaches, we will be knowing who is actually acting towards what. So in that case, our key stakeholder will be community, and this community led planning approaches is important for this course as well. So we'd like to know a bit about community-led planning approaches. Then in the later section of the course, we'll be knowing different models of planning to understand the hierarchical planning processes. And in the end, or the later section of this course, we'll be knowing physical planning and development control practices in our country. Mostly we'll be talking about city development and development control authority. In our case, it is Rajuk. And by understanding all this mechanism and everything, we will be knowing that how Rajuk is actually implementing their planning approaches to the ground. And with this note, we will be ending our course. Let's talk about a bit learning outcomes. What will be the assumed capacity our students will achieve? So we understand that we understand and assume that after completion of this course, students will be able to understand concepts and important terminologies of planning, important terminologies about cities, important terminologies of about cities functions and behaviors and people and places. Then students will be able to explain the planning processes and plan formulation processes. Then you will be understanding the relationship among people, place, and plan. You will also identify the theoretical aspects of approaching the planning process in global and local contexts. So we are not confining ourselves within the global context always, but sometimes will be switch back and forth to understand how global practices are implemented in our country, and our local practices are also replicated in the global scale. So how and the ripple effect of it, of our individual deed, how it works. Then we're assuming students will be able to analyze the critical issues related to planning, both in global and Bangladeshi context. And eventually, you will be analyzing the contemporary planning practices and current issues of the cities. So these are our desired learning outcomes. Talking about the teaching learning methodology, we are expecting all the lectures will be followed by discourse, informal debates on current issues following lectures is will be every class's job, so it has to be participatory. So from the both end you have to respond. So quiz after each segment. If, for example, if our class has two different segments or pre-recorded videos, each recorded videos will be followed by a quiz. And this is how we will be understanding that the students are more engaged with the learning process. There will be bi-weekly individual assignment to have in-depth understanding on the respective topic. Then finally, there might be some assignments, reading assignments from book, journal, and monographs, etc. So, what are the reading materials we'll be consulting? First of all, we'll be consulting Planning and Urban Design Standards. This is the book written by Frederick Steiner. It's a very good one. And secondly, we will be consulting Jordan Young's Urban Planning for Dummies. So other than that, we'll also be consulting Urban Land Use Planning by Chapin and many other books. And beyond these books, we'll be consulting different planning documents. For example, Dhaka Structure Plan 2016 to 2035. Sometimes we'll be consulting Mahanagar Imarat Nirman Vidhimala, which came to the light in 2008. We'll also discuss and consult Bangladesh National Building Code, and we'll be happy to consult, a global document, Urban Planning for City Leaders, produced by UN Habitat, and some other planning laws, and will be recommended based on the class requirement. Most of all these theories and everything will be yeah, somehow negotiated with our current detailed area plan. Then talking about the tentative schedule, this is a 14-week semester. So we'll be starting with introducing the planning concepts in planning with you. Then we will try to understand the planning and planning ideologies. Here you would know different terminologies related to urban cities, public space, and how the cities and public space are interacting among each other, how planning approaches are thought of, what are the basic sociological or psychological considerations planning always consult. And later on we'll be talking about urban plan and planning process. So this is basically why planning matters. So it's a process, and we always refer it as a system. This system is not formulated in a day. So we need to understand the urban planning evolution theories, and it will be divided into two parts. In the first part, we'll be consulting 5 theories, and in the second part, we'll be consulting next 5 theories. So overall, it's about 10 theories we'll be consulting. Next, then we will learn the nature and the form of cities and urban-rural linkages, and how this linkages is important to function city better. How this in-migration and out-migration and relationship with the system of people with the system works, we would like to know through this lecture. Then we'll talk about urban planning composition. So there are 20 composition elements we'll be talking. So I have divided this urban planning composition lecture into two parts. So 10 composition in one class, and the second part will be consisted of 10 more composition elements. After knowing all the planning theories and urban planning compositions, and forms, natures, we'll be looking at how cities are evolving in global north and global south. Basically, we will be talking about urbanization, its trend, its nature, and how megacities are working, how smaller cities are working, how mid-range cities or secondary cities are working, what are the problems and weaknesses and challenges they're facing. And after knowing that, we'll be talking about complexity of urban areas. So urban areas, we can assume it's not something semi-lattice, it's not something tree-like formation. It's sometimes it is called a semi-lattice formation. That means it has a lot of systems and subsystems. That's why we'll be talking about systems theory or systemic theory under these complexity theories of urban areas. After that, we'll be having Eid vacation, and after coming back from Eid vacation, we'll be taking 12th lecture, and this lecture is consisted of wicked problems in planning. So planning is dealing with always problems, and all those problems of spaces, people, community, neighborhood, and so on. Overall, we would like to term it as a systemic problem. So how these problems are evolving and how these problems are interrelated to each other, we'd like to know in detail. So in the 8th week, we'll be talking about different approaches of urban planning, and these approaches will be started from the land use, and we call them as a place for everything. So whenever a city has a land use plan, that means we can assume where is the place for what kind of activities and what kind of functions. We can easily understand that. So how this land use plan formulates and what are the considerations, and we'll be knowing through this lecture. Moving on, we'll be talking about transportation planning and mobility and accessibility issues, and how to think mobility and accessibility issues, keeping in mind people in the center or core of our understanding. And after that, we'll be talking about the next approach or element. I would like to say, call it as element, which is urban design. And we always came to know urban design is all about city beautiful movement, or beautifying the cities, but it's not about always beautifying the cities, rather making cities more functional. Then lecture 17 will be on urban environment. So we'll be talking about ecology, ecosystem, carrying capacity of cities and spaces. We'll be talking about ecosystem services and landscape fragmentation. So mostly this lecture will be talking about great outdoors experiences. Um, After that, one more element of urban planning approaches is called the infrastructure and public services. And we can assume public services means something is for everyone. So infrastructure is basically public infrastructure, and public services is the core of the lecture. core idea of the lecture, and we'll be knowing how this public services is disseminated, how this public services is distributed around different communities, and how the decision making process of having a mega structure or any sort of structure works in planning decisions. We'll be knowing through this lecture. Later on, we need to know, and we'd like to know, community-led planning tools. And this community-led planning tools is basically, we will try to understand from the people's perspective how people raise their voice and how their voice is important to decide on something which is desired for the city. Then the later section of our course will be talking about hierarchy of town planning. In this case, we'll be dealing with different models: central place theory, concentric zone models, sector models, RAD-bound superblock models, neighborhood unit design, core frame models, and multiple nuclei models. After knowing all these models, will be very end of the semester, and would like to know the physical planning practices of our City Development and Control Authority. In our case, it is Rajuk. And by understanding the role of Rajuk, we'll be ending our course, and we'll have a wrap up and a lesson learned session. So the evaluation of the course, basically, the course is designed with quizzes, group presentation, and assignments, which will carry 30% of the grade. There will be a midterm, which is 20%, and there will be a final exam, which is 50%. But all this distribution of numbers may change as per UGC and university